Lisa, how did you find carnivore?
Oh, that's a good question, Dave. I would say that I found carnivore the same way that I found Jesus, by trying everything else first. And many things seemed to work for an amount of time. And then ultimately, I found that what I was doing wasn't quite working. I've shifted my diet throughout my life. I'm introducing different things, taking away different things. I spent 35 years as some form of vegetarian. So when I was 16, they showed us at school the inside of an abattoir and something just went, oh, no. And so decided then, you're a vulnerable girl at 16. They show you the inside of an abattoir. And I think there was some kind of, propaganda or conditioning happening there. It was a long time ago. But I think that that's what that was all about. And so immediately I went vegetarian at that point. My mum wasn't too happy about it. My youngest sister had already gone vegetarian prior to that. And I'm not entirely sure what her reasons were for that. But it was something that I was very determined to do. And I started out like, what does a vegetarian do? Does a vegetarian eat fish? Does a vegetarian eat eggs? Do they eat cheese? And so I kind of settled on an ovo-lacto vegetarian diet, which I did for many, many years. And then I encountered veganism, and it wasn't from a space of, that's a cool thing to do, or there was something wrong with what I was eating. I didn't have any health problems that I was aware of. And I've always been the kind of person that cooks from scratch as well. So there was very little in the way of processed foods in my diet already. But it was just one day, opened the fridge. I was about to get some cheese and crackers or something. I think it was around Christmas. I was going to have some port and Stilton. And I went in to get the butter, to butter the crackers and the Stilton. And something inside me said, no, no. And I thought, wow, that's very strange. And from that point, I just couldn't go near any kind of dairy. I cut out eggs as well at that point. So I was completely vegan, and I stayed that way for 4 years. And it wasn't a struggle. People would say to me, oh, do you miss cheese? Don't you miss this? Don't you miss that? And I said, absolutely not. Because if I was missing something, if I felt like I wanted it, then I would have it. I'm the kind of person that would be flexible that way. Excuse me. But so I did that for 4 years. And then after about 4 years, something inside me said, I want fish. I was craving fish. And I thought, I can't crave fish. I'm a vegan now. What's going on with that? It's really strange. And so I got on the phone with a friend of mine who says he's a flexitarian. And I said, what do I do? And he said, well, just have a bit of fish and see how it goes, So, excuse me. And so I made myself a big salad, and I put some tinned fish on top, like some sardines or mackerel or something. I can't remember what it was. And, poked it with a fork, and it moved. And I thought, oh gosh, this feels weird to me. But I had it anyway. And I thought, all right, that's fine. Maybe I'll start with fish Fridays. That can be something, that's for me. And sort of slowly over time, I reintroduced fish into my diet properly. And with it came along dairy and eggs again. And I have to say that I think that having dairy and eggs all of those years was what actually stopped me from being completely malnourished, because I do know that a lot of vegans over, a certain period of time start to experience malnutrition. And I genuinely think it's the dairy and the eggs, particularly the eggs, because I did used to eat a lot of eggs, and I still do now. So yeah, that was sort of 4 years of veganism, then into pescatarianism for a few years. And then I hit 48. And things just didn't work the way that they'd always worked. So exercising more, sleeping more, eating more vegetables, etc., just wasn't working for me. I just felt utterly terrible. And I've got to say, at this stage, I'd always been that person that sort of yo-yo dieted. So I never got, obese, but I did get big. I got very overweight at some point, and then other times I would go down to very slim. And I would, over the years, I would be kind of yo-yoing up and down. And I always followed the idea of, gosh, I must be eating too much. I need to cut the fat, cut the cheese a little bit, Lisa, cut the butter. Eat more carbohydrates, eat more vegetables, and go to the gym. Get lots and lots of exercise, get lots and lots of cardio, because that'll burn the calories off. This is what I believed. And obviously, it's what I see now in other people. And I want to take them by the scruff of the neck and say, no, please listen to me. This is not how it works. But that's what I'd done over the years. And that's why I yo-yoed. And I have to say that, depending on how much I was eating and how much exercise I was doing, my weight would go up or down, up or down. And frankly, it was exhausting, because I would exhaust myself and starve myself, exhaust myself and starve myself until I was slim. And then I was like, okay, now I can relax a little bit. And then the weight would gradually creep up again, because at that point, I'd never even heard of insulin. I thought it was something to do with diabetes. Didn't know anything about insulin. Didn't know anything about any of that at all. So yeah, I got to 48, and the old rules stopped working for me. It didn't matter how much exercise I was doing. Didn't seem to matter how little or how much I was eating. I just felt, I think it was my adrenals. I just felt exhausted, not physically exhausted, but like emotionally and mentally exhausted, because I wasn't doing any more or less than I'd always done in the past. It's just the same amount. And so I tried all the things, like you do, getting more sleep, sleeping at different times. I cut out a variety of different things in my diet. The one thing that I didn't cut out was carbohydrates and vegetables. I was eating more vegetables, more carbohydrates, less fat, less cheese, and so on. And things might have seemed like they were working. I noticed a couple of times there were things that I cut out that seemed to work for like a day or two, and then boom, it just all came back again.
Yeah,
And so
just out of interest, at this point, were you kind of like keeping calories low and that kind of, or trying to lower calories and stuff like that? Like, I feel like we get into this thing of, if I'm getting rid of the fat and I'm getting rid of all these things and I'm restricting my calories and I'm feeling a little bit hungry, like it's painful, it must be working because I'm working hard to stay on this diet.
that is exactly it. That's how it's always been. My entire life, up until a couple of years ago. My entire life. I was thinking, am I just expected to be hungry all of the time? I mean, literally, Dave, if I could have got away with it, I would have eaten from the moment I opened my eyes until I shut them at night. I could have eaten all day long without stopping, literally. And, it was only through sheer willpower and don't be greedy, you've had enough, you're putting weight on, etc., that I would stop eating. That's the only thing that would stop me. I could eat a lot of food. I could eat a great big plate of pasta with whatever, and then I could be like, okay, I feel full, and then an hour later, absolutely ravenous, and I had no idea about the carbohydrate trap, the addiction that I had to carbohydrates, and the fact that I wasn't fully nourished. So in just complete and utter exasperation, I just, went onto YouTube trying to figure out what was wrong. Why do I feel like this? What can I do to fix this? And I came across, this is random actually, because this came up not when I was looking for it. I was doing other things on YouTube. I'm always on YouTube, and this came up as a suggested video. Never heard of the guy, didn't know anything about him. And it was a video that said, here are 16 symptoms and what nutritional deficiency they could be suggesting. Oh, that sounds interesting. Nothing to do with me. I just opened it and watched it. And there were a few, it was things like, chapped lips, cracked heels, red eyes, dry skin, all those kind of things. It wasn't anything to do with, the sense of overwhelm that I was feeling, the sense of, sort of emotional exhaustion. Nothing to do with that. It was all little physical symptoms, like sort of ridged nails and all of those. And I identified from it, there were like sort of 2 or 3 things. And what this guy suggested was to take a B1 supplement and zinc. I thought, I'll try that. Yeah, maybe it'll get rid of, my cracked heels or my chapped lips or whatever it was. And so I go to the following day, go to the health food shop, I get a B1 supplement and zinc. And within not even 2 days, all the overwhelm disappeared. And I did not make that connection. I hadn't made that. And I'd been suffering it every single day for months and months. And what I was expecting was that I wouldn't get chapped lips anymore. I wouldn't get cracked heels anymore. And that happened. But also it removed all the overwhelm. So it told me that I had a nutritional deficiency. And so I took these tablets for these supplements for about whatever, however long they were for, 30 days, 60 days, whatever was in the bottle. And then I thought, well, I'm fixed. It's fine. Everything's working. And then when I stopped taking them, because I run out, within 2 days, whoomph, it was all back. And I thought, right, I'm not the kind of person that uses a sticking plaster. I'm not the kind of person that goes, oh, well, I'll take a supplement then. I wanted to understand what's going on beneath that. So around about that time, I was moving back to the UK. I was living abroad and I was moving back to the UK. If anything was overwhelming, that was overwhelming, let me tell you. So getting all that stuff together to move me and the dog back to the UK. And when I arrived back in the UK, I noticed very quickly that nearly everybody was sick. Everybody was on medication. Now, I wasn't on any medication at that point. I wasn't even taking the supplements. But I noticed that everybody I met, I'd take the dog out for a walk, I'd get chatting with people, and they would tell me, they'd tell me about their knees. They tell me about their, that they got an appointment. They tell me that, this medication that they're on and so on. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's everyone. It's all everybody and ever talks about is how sick they are. Family members were sick. It's one of the reasons that I came back to try and help out a little bit with that. And I just think it was almost everybody that I met over 40 had some kind of medical issue and were on long-term medication for that. And there seemed to be, I thought, I've got to get to the bottom of this. I really have got to get to the bottom of this. There's got to be some connection. I'd sort of woken up to, I must have some kind of nutritional deficiency myself if I'm having to take zinc and B1. Why am I deficient in zinc and B1? So I was kind of busy with moving and getting settled in and, reintroducing myself to everybody because I'd been away for some years and getting all that sorted out. While in the back of my mind, there was, what's going on with health here? What in the world is happening? Because this is not right. This really was a problem. And then I was running upstairs at my parents' house. I think it was like in the January or something. I was running up the stairs, 14 steps, been running up those stairs since I was 3 years old, up and down, up and down, up and down. I ran halfway up the steps and stopped. Oh, it's an effort. I thought, wait a minute. It's not supposed to be an effort, not for me. I'm not having it. I will not accept that it's my age excuse. I just won't. I was like, there are some people that at 48, 49 can run up and down stairs. I've always been able to run up and down stairs. I won't accept that at 49 I can't. So I really started digging into it and, found out about sugar. Who knew? It turns out half the internet knows, but I didn't. My family didn't know. People didn't know. I started trying to tell people about this. I changed my own diet, moved out of my parents' place into somewhere where I was doing obviously my own shopping, my own cooking and so on. And started to improve my own diet and started to move toward a ketogenic way of eating. I got rid of all processed food. So at that point, I'd reintroduced a few processed things because they're everywhere in the UK. And so I got rid of all of that, completely all of that. entirely cooking from scratch, removing carbohydrates. This gentleman that I'd come across online, by the way, was Dr. Eric Berg. And so he was the start of my, we love him. And he was the start of my journey. And he really is very much a go-to when it comes to ailments. Fantastic guy. So because of him, because of his videos, because of his information and information that I found elsewhere, because, YouTube and its algorithms, if you like Dr. Eric Berg, then you'll also like this guy. And so I started watching a few of these and I really got into it and started to remove certain ingredients. And when I did go keto, I couldn't believe the difference in me. It was immediate. I mean, seriously immediate. I felt flexible. My skin looked better. My eyes looked clearer. I felt energized. I had the amount of energy that I don't remember ever having. Like, it was consistent all day. All day. I was like the Duracell bunny. Like, was it the Energizer bunny? Whatever. I was like this all of the time. I had boatloads of energy. It was great. And the dog loved it as well, because he was like, great, let's go. So, yeah. So where did I go from there? So I did a pescatarian version of a ketogenic diet for around about a year. And the benefits were huge, really huge. Now, after around about a year, my body started saying to me, like it had done, a few years ago, like it had said to me, you need to eat some fish now. My body went, meat. I was like, meat? No, you got to be joking. I have not eaten meat since I was 16, never cooked the stuff. Don't be ridiculous. There's no way I'm going to be eating meat. But my body was going, you need to eat some meat. You need to eat some meat. I'm a very intuitive person. I try to be in touch with what my body's asking me for. And so I was like, right, okay. So what did I do? I was staying in a hotel over Christmas. I'd gone on a little Christmas break, and it was fully catered. It was full board. So I thought, right, I don't have to cook this stuff. I don't have to figure out how to cook a steak or, any of that. It's all done for me. All I have to do is not choose the vegetarian or fish option off the menu. I just have to be like, right, I'll have the beef, I'll have the turkey, I'll have the whatever. And so I did. And so it was very nice catering. So it was a really good introduction into meat for me, because I didn't have to cook it myself. I didn't have to figure it out. It was done, and it was done by professionals as well. It wasn't, just some random person. It was a nice hotel with good food. And I thought, wow, okay, all right. So after this sort of 4 or 5 day break, whatever it was, I went home, and I was like, I've got to figure out how to do this myself. Never bought meat in my life. Never, ever bought meat in my life. So I go to the supermarket, and I'm in front of the fridges. It was Lidl. I was in front of the fridges, and I was looking at it thinking, I've no idea what any of this is. Really, genuinely, it was like, I had no idea. I didn't know what it was. Even though it said on it, it might say, chicken mince or pork loin or ribeye steak. What's that? What is that? What's this kind of mince is different to this? How do I cook that? What are these steaks? Like, do I fry them? Do I boil them? Like, what do I do with this stuff? I had no idea. And so I was standing there like a complete lemon with absolutely no idea what to get. I didn't know what to reach for. And a lady sort of came along with a trolley, and she was like, oh, excuse me, just sort of opens the door, reaches in and picks up a pack of, what was it? Pork chops, I think it was, put them in her trolley and trundled off. I thought, right, well, I'll start there. If she thinks they're okay, I'll go with that as well. So I got some pork chops. I don't know what these are. Don't know what to do with them. Put them in my trolley, and off I went. And that was kind of the start of me, learning how to cook meat. But I had to go online. Like, how do you cook these things? What do you do? If it didn't say on the label, depending on what I got, I had to, look it up. I started to then sort of start to follow carnivore influencers. So some of the keto influencers I noticed, like Dr. Ken Berry and those guys, it seemed that they'd sort of started out with a ketogenic diet, and they had sort of then moved over into recommending meat more and more. And so I thought, right, I'll pay attention to, what they're talking about. No commitment here, no commitment. I'm just going to do this as an experiment. My body says it wants meat, I'll give it meat. I'm going to see how it goes. It was not, I am carnivore at all, not at all. I just reintroduced it alongside, the veg and the fruit and, well, just, the berries and all of that. After a while, what I started to recognise was that all these, 9 or 10 different types of fruit and veg that I used to eat every single day, didn't want them anymore. And I was like, is that okay? Is it okay not to eat veg? But I just didn't want them. I was just like, I don't want that. I don't have any desire for it. My body's not craving it. And what was happening was I was continuing to buy this stuff because that's what I always bought, and meat on top now. But it just wasn't getting eaten. And I thought I would come to make a meal, and it would be a steak or some pork or some mince or whatever. And I was like, I don't really want any veg with that. I don't need it. I felt like I didn't need it. Now this was completely alien to a 35-year vegetarian, completely alien concept. And I thought, this can't be right. I thought, well, I was going to see how I feel. I'll see how I feel. And what I did notice was that my mental health improved. So as well as my physical health, me having boatloads of energy, having boatloads of energy, feeling on top of the world, mental clarity, everything was there. The overwhelm was all gone. It had been well gone for a long time. And my mental health started to improve. Now, I did have for as long as I could remember, like this sort of baseline depression. So it was always there running in the background. So it didn't always, sort of materialize. It wasn't always there in, I can't get out of bed, or I feel really terrible, or I feel, like I want to do myself in. It wasn't always like that, but it was running in the background. It was like this little baseline. And obviously when things did get difficult in life, that would rear its head and I would feel really rough, really mentally rough. And it would, every day would be a battle. And then when things got easier, it would go away again, but just still be running in the background. Well, I noticed, and I can't even tell you when it was. I can't tell you how long it was. Was it a couple of days? Was it a month? I don't know. But it was after about a month that I realised that it had gone. I realised that vanished. Now, from all the, I don't want to say research because it's not my own research, but from all of the other interviews, like many of your interviews that I've listened to, other people that I've spoken to, many people who go on to a variety of podcasts and are interviewed, just ordinary people, not any kind of influencers or anything like that. Ordinary people that have said the same thing, that they fixed their lifelong mental health issues with introducing meat into their diet, high fat, and letting go of all the superfluous other stuff, all the, the veg and the nuts and all of that kind of stuff. So I stuck with that for a while because it was working for me. And then over time, I was like, I'll try little other things. I'll introduce things. I'll see how they are. Because I like to test things, on myself and, and see how I react to them. So it was working perfectly well. And so I would have like maybe some berries or something like that. And I did notice that after I had some berries, even though I was still in ketosis, I didn't feel quite as good as I did on just the meat. Absolutely. I've noticed that if I eat dairy, then tastes great. I love full fat Greek yogurt. Love this stuff. But I can't stop. I get like the 500-gram tub of it and I can just sit there and I just have a couple of spoonfuls of this after my dinner, because it's nice, because it's, it's pudding, isn't it? It's afters, it's dessert. And that's what we're used to doing. We always have to have pudding or afters or dessert, give ourselves a treat. So I'd have like a couple of spoonfuls of that. And then like 5 or 10 minutes later, I'd come out of some dairy-induced stupor and I'd be scraping around the bottom of the tub. I'd be like, oh my gosh, I've eaten the entire thing. And so I've realised that dairy delicious as it is just too addictive.
Right.
It's got those, what are they called? Like
So
the caseins, the casein.
casomorphins, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, this is
exactly.
why cheese is banned from my house.
Yeah, yeah. I've had to go down that route myself, Dave, because if I don't buy it, I can't eat it, obviously, and I have to stay away from it because if it's in the house and I feel like I want a little bit of something to eat and nothing is cooked ready, cheese is too easy. Cheese is too easy. When I started doing the keto diet, but as a pescatarian, I started trying to persuade other people to do the same because I'd had these enormous benefits. You know it yourself, like, gosh, wow, it's changed my life. You tell everybody. You know, it was like Jesus. It's like Jesus has changed my life. You tell everybody. Well, he doesn't always fall on ears that want to hear it, shall we say. So I started putting my recipes on Facebook, just a photograph of my dish and just the basics of what I did. And my friend Lauren said to me, oh, these are really good. You know, you should put them in a cookbook. I was like, well, there's loads of keto cookbooks out there. And she was like, well, you know, just do it anyway. So what? You know, these are nice, easy recipes. And so I did. So I put them, so I did create like a little cookbook and it's called Keto Gentility, Food Refined. Okay. And it's very simple recipes. A lot of it is still pescatarian. There are a few sort of, because I was kind of in the transition phase, sort of moving into meat away from, you know, when I created this. So there are a few meat dishes in there as well. A lot of it is suitable for vegetarians, suitable for pescatarians. And so when I say mainly pescatarian, because that's mostly where I was, and there's a few meat dishes in there as well. And it's also got like some desserts in that are very sort of, you know, cream and cream cheese heavy, that sort of thing, because that's where I was at that point. And I think it's a very nice tool to get over that hump. Because let me tell you, 3 years ago, if somebody would have said to me, stop eating what you're eating, here's a plate of meat, there is no way on God's green earth would I have said, yes, great, let's do it. So that was sort of, you know, that sort of is my transition. And I use that to help other people to go through their transition phase as well, to get themselves to a point. And for some people, it might be enough. It might be, that's as far as they need to be. But for a lot of people, they need to take it quite a bit further. They have got, you know, maybe a lot of weight to lose, maybe some illness that they need to rectify. And so I suggest that they go further. And so that's where I'm at with my diet, with a meat-based ketogenic diet. Do I have a little bit of dark chocolate sometimes? Yes. Do I sometimes eat a bit of dairy? Yes. Do I sometimes eat some berries now and then? But I can't base my diet on it because I notice the difference in myself. And those things are for entertainment rather than nutrition.
Right. So basically, day to day, the main part of your diet looks like what?
Yeah, so the main part of my diet is usually I will have bacon and eggs. And then later on, if I do eat 2 meals, sometimes I don't eat until sort of tea time, about 4 or 5 o'clock, something like that. Sometimes if I do decide to eat earlier on, it'll be bacon and eggs. And then later on, I'll have, it'll either be pork or beef. Now it's winter here. Sometimes I'll put a crock pot on and I'll just put meat and salt in there. I might add a few dried herbs if I feel like entertainment, but it's meat mainly. I do eat butter. I eat a good sea salt. What else? What else do I? That's pretty much it, really. It's pretty much it. I might sometimes, because I do run a keto group, what I might do sometimes is buy some basic veg, like some garlic or some onions or whatever, kind of put it in a dish, maybe a bit of tomato passata, something like that, just, you know, as a little bit of encouragement and motivation for my group, but I don't need it myself. It's not something that I need. It's entertainment, basically, at the end of the day for me. And it helps them to, you know, to sort of transition from ordinary, spaghetti bolognese or whatever, to move over into a meat-based dish with maybe a little bit of veg to help them with that transition.
Right. And so for you, when did you make the move from that the kind of pescatarian keto over to like predominantly meat?
Do you know what? It's coming up to 2 years, isn't it? Yeah, it is. It's 2 years. Yeah, it's 2 years. So it was 3 years ago that I came back to the UK. I did about a year as a pescatarian, ketogenic. And then, yeah, because it was just before Christmas when I came back. It was like the end of November, something like that. I started doing keto in the January. And then about a year later, that's when I stayed at that hotel for Christmas where, there's the option of the meat. And then from then, that's when I started to cook for myself meat. I thought it was such a learning curve was cooking meat. I've never cooked meat in my life. I'd no idea what to do. I'd always been, the person that makes all these fantastic vegetarian and vegan dishes. I was really good at that. But cooking meat was a whole other world.
It's like you're a
I thought it was just
professional
easy.
at chopping. I'm a professional at chopping, but when it comes to cooking meat, yeah. Uh,
Absolutely. Cooking meat was another world.
so where were you living before you came back to the UK? Because it sounds like when you came back, it was like, oh my God, what's happened to everyone? Like,
Yeah.
I guess you weren't living in Australia or America before that, was it?
Yeah, right, exactly. No, I wasn't in the States. I was actually in Portugal. And I would say the vast majority of my friends in Portugal were expats. So they were from all over the world, everywhere, just all over the place. I knew a few Portuguese people, not very many, just one or two. Because obviously, they've got their own sort of friends and family and so on. The expats tend to sort of stick together because, we're looking for connection, whereas, the locals, they don't need us. But I had one or two Portuguese friends. But yeah, the majority of people seem to be fairly well. And I think, like in Portugal, they generally do tend to cook from scratch. And they do something I used to notice actually, Dave, and I've never thought about it. I never thought about making that connection, but something that I did used to complain about in Portuguese restaurants. Where's the veg? Why do people not eat enough vegetables? And they would eat primarily the meat and the fish. And I'd be like, where's the darn veg? I'll just eat a plate of fish. That was ridiculous. But they would be a small amount of veg. Now, they did eat potatoes, but I think what they were doing was filling up on the fish and the meat, not eating as much in the way of vegetables. And I would say that's probably what keeps most of it. I would say the Portuguese generally are fairly slim. They look healthy. Now, I don't know if they're healthy. Who knows what medication they might be on? And, because I didn't know them particularly well. I speak some Portuguese, but not fluent. So I'd never get into anything in any depth. It was always very sort of superficial conversation. But in general, I don't remember, other than the very elderly, I don't remember people being like we have in the UK, like you have in Australia, like they have in the US to, the nth degree, people being obese and really struggling with just the day-to-day life, with just day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yes, it's a bit of a shock. It's like, after being in Japan for a number of years and going back to Australia, that was the same for me. It was like, hey, what's happened? And probably not that much had changed since I'd been there last time. It's just that I hadn't just been seeing people in Australia day to day for quite a few years. So it was like
Yeah.
the contrast was very sudden, or very, very stark.
Yeah, it is a stark contrast, isn't it? And like you say, when you were in Australia before, it was all around you. It was just the norm, wasn't it? And that's, I think, how it's been. Because when I think about it, my grandparents were unwell. It's not unusual for people to be unwell when I really think about it. But it was that stark contrast of coming back to the UK and every conversation. And it wasn't me leading it. It wasn't me leading the conversation like it is now. And I'm always talking about health. It wasn't me. It was what people were telling me all of the time. My knees, I've got arthritis, I've got this and that, I'm on this medication. And that, was really problematic. One of my family members was suffering really badly with dementia. And it was, it's a real big impact on the family, is that, dementia is huge. And so, I found out about sugar. I realized that sugar was addictive, that when a person has dementia, the more sugar they have, the more sugar they want, and the worse it's making them, and so on. And so, my recommendation of nourishing this person and, sort of trying to wean them off the sugar went down like a lead balloon. It really went down like a lead balloon. Right? My name was Mud. I was like a terrible person for suggesting it. And it was too late anyway. And so there was nothing I could do. People hated me for saying it, quite honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
So how much money would I have to give you to go back to a regular diet? So, like, I've got $1 million here,
I mean, you can't put a price on your health, can you, Dave? You just can't put a price on your health. You just can't. I mean, if you don't have yet, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy how I felt those last few months before I left Portugal. It was awful. I was exhausted, mentally and emotionally exhausted for reasons I just couldn't fathom, that went away once I was getting the proper nutrition, once I was taking the B1 and zinc supplement, that were masking the fact that I was malnourished. Now, the reason I didn't continue with the B1 and the zinc and wanted to understand the underlying reasons for me being deficient was because I know that you can't just put a sticking plaster on. If there's something missing, there's probably something missing elsewhere. You can't just have this thing in isolation and hope that it's going to fix everything. Now, am I against supplements? Not at all. Occasionally I will take supplements, like in the winter. It's winter here at the moment and I'm not getting as much, vitamin D as I'd like to. So I will take a vitamin D3 supplement with K2 to get the calcium in the right place and so on. And I don't have any issue with a person taking supplements, but I'm a food first person. Before we start adding in, electrolytes and adding in, vitamin this and vitamin that, before we start adding those in, let's look at the diet first. And if it seems that the diet can be improved in some way, great, go for it. If it seems that there's something that's not, it's not getting through for whatever reason, you're not having enough of it, then, supplement if you need to. But I think that is your last resort. I don't say that medication is a last resort. I say medication it's an almost never. It's a never. Look at everything else first. Absolutely. Is there a place for medication? Maybe. But for me, it's so far away from where I think people need to start, which is always diet and lifestyle. Get that on point first as much as possible. Supplement if you need to. And that, I think, will fix 99% of issues, as your channel is testament to. The number of people that I see that have just been to doctors, they've done everything. They've taken all the medication. They've been to see all the specialists. They've not been able to get out of bed for years. They can't work. They can't function properly. And then somehow, miraculously, they come across the right diet. They come across a carnivorous diet. They get the protein up. They get the fat up. They remove all the superfluous rubbish that's keeping them sick. And boom, they're flourishing.
Yeah. So based on the experience you've had, and also maybe the experiences of the people in your group as well, if you were giving someone advice about transitioning into carnivore, would you say rip the Band-Aid off and jump in, or would you say go slowly?
Yeah, I always say go slowly. And unfortunately, I see this in quite a lot of carnivore groups, where people just sort of go rushing in like, oh, hey, I'm new to carnivore. What do I do? And then I see all the advice, boom, 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 boom. Lots of people saying, just eat meat and fat and fish and eggs. And that's all you need. It is all you need. But then I see I failed. I'm not feeling well. I've got diarrhea. I've got headaches. I feel really rough, etc., etc. And are there some people that can get away with just making that switch instantly? Yeah, they exist. They absolutely do. But there are some people that just run across a busy road and don't get run over. I don't recommend it. It's not your best way forward. If you want to do it safely, if you want to take care of yourself and you have, the best chance of succeeding, then the best way is to take it slowly for two reasons. So one, you need to make sure that you're taking care of your microbiome because that's everything. Your gut is everything. And taking it slowly, allowing time for it to adjust safely is your best way forward. And the second is you're a human being with emotions and habits and a lifetime of conditioning. And just suddenly, taking the sweetie out of a child's mouth, it's horrific. Maybe you can do it for a week. Yeah, I've got it for a week. I've got this down. I can just eat steaks every day. And then I'm really missing potatoes. I'm really missing this. I'm really missing that. And so if you make some sensible switches, such as moving from, I don't know, like a fruit yogurt or something into, with all its rubbish that it's got a potato starch and flavourings and sugar and whatever else, if you make that switch from these fruit yogurts that you're used to having into, for example, a full-fat Greek yogurt with a few berries in it, that is a good switch to start with. And if you are having, for example, your meatballs or whatever, if you're getting the processed meatballs that are like 47% meat and the rest of it is just rubbish, make your own meatballs with 100% meat. Those kind of switches, but you can keep, a tomato sauce. Just don't get your dolmio with all its rubbish in it. Make your own tomato sauce and make those switches slowly, so that you're eating a whole food rather than the processed rubbish. And over time, your gut will start to thank you. And then you make it. I honestly say that I think a person needs to do a keto diet for a minimum, a ketogenic diet, which includes, a bit of non-starchy veg, a little bit of fruity berries, the low carb. Keep themselves low carb. Keep themselves, a good amount of protein, a good amount of fat. But do that for about 3 months and then see where you're at. Then you can start to, and naturally it will start to fall away. The things that you don't need will start to fall away as your body becomes nourished. But it's so important to support the biome and support you mentally and emotionally, because food is habitual, it's emotional, and what you don't want is to just suddenly remove everything and then boom, you're faced with, steak and eggs or whatever, which is wonderful. But you're going to emotionally miss the foods that you're used to.
Yeah, sorry, you made me laugh there when you said the 47% meatballs, and I was just had this thought come into my mind there that if it's only 47%, they should just be called balls.
Yeah, right. Fillables.
Right, exactly. So, Lisa, if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way of getting in touch with you online?
I would say probably go to my website. It's a really nice place to go. So my website is, I'll show you again. So it's ketogentility.co.uk. So go onto my website. I've got some lovely articles. I've got some meal plans, that kind of thing on there. And you'll find links to my Facebook group. If you like what I've got to say, you can come over to my Facebook group. My Facebook group is, the URL is Keto Gentility. The name of the group is Keto Beginners UK. There's around about 2,000 people in there at the moment. It's a really nice community of Brits. Okay. People are great in there, very supportive. It started out with, as all Facebook groups do, with just a few people in there. And I was thinking, this is nice. I'd like to keep it like this, nice and friendly. People know each other. People are kind and they're helpful. And I'm getting up toward 2000 now, and I was thinking, oh gosh, it's going to be haywire. It's going to be chaos. I can't imagine having an enormous group like yours. How do you administer that? But actually, what I found is that because it's always been a community, it continues to be a community. And as it grows, it sort of administers itself. I find that people are so willing and helpful, to help each other, to support one another. Now, the advice that they give sometimes, I'm like, no, not fiber. No, add more fat, not more fiber. I sometimes find that the advice is off, but the heart is there. And I think having that support around you, and I'm always in that group. I'm in that group every single day, helping people to get themselves into a better position. And of course, there's a lot of questions that come up. I actually wrote this as well, Dave, if you don't mind me saying. So there are lots and lots of common questions that people have with keto. And I noticed that these same questions over and over again, same questions I had, same questions you might have had. And so I wrote a guide, and it's called the Keto Beginners UK 28-day guide and journal. And what it does is it helps people to understand keto from the ground up, and how they might sort of implement it into their lives from different perspectives, from what they're going to take to work for lunch, what they're going to do when they go to a family dinner, what they can and can't have, and what's going to help them ultimately, and to reflect on their current diet and how it might help them to move forward by making this switch. So that's another way. But yeah, if people want to find me, they can come into my Facebook group. They can find me I'm on Instagram. Feel free to message me on Instagram, Lisa Cherry Beaumont. I'm on Facebook as well. I'm the only Lisa Cherry Beaumont, so you can find me that way.
No worries. Well, I'll link to all those in the show notes.
Thank you.
Lisa, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
You're so very welcome. It's absolutely been my pleasure. Anything that I have said that even reaches just one person, then it's been, worth our time together today.